Mike,
Steve.
you know, while we're writing season 2 of The Last Resort, what we should really do with our times, we could discuss the characters' favourite movies.
Interesting concept, Steve, because I like movies and, well, you like movies and our characters like movies too.
Then it's settled. The Last Resort Movie Club is born. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Bad Scripts Presents The Last Resort Movie Club. Joining me, as ever, the industrious Mr. Mike Garlia. Mike, wonderful to have you with me as always. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Steve. It's going to be an interesting episode, this one, slightly out of step from previous ones, but keeping within the realms of 70s and 80s style movies. So, a lot to talk about on this one, isn't there?
Yeah, a 1981 classic, which, when I use the term classic, I'm not using it as in the classic Turner movies. I'm more thinking in the classic porno movies. No, I mean, let's get into the discussion about the movie itself, and obviously, first of all, we need to introduce whose favorite movie this is as well. So this week we're going to be discussing Wayne's favorite movie. Now, this was always going to be not as should we say artistic as some might like. Wayne isn't the sort of character that's watching French cinema and enjoying subtitles. So let's hear what Wayne had to say about the movie we've got coming up. Right, is it on? Yeah, okay. So my favourite film would probably be Porky's, the original, not the sequels, because it doesn't quite translate once you've gone past that first one. This was a real groundbreaker for me. It showed me that, guys can be guys, that you can insult people and that actually that's okay. You know, it's all in the realms of building stronger people and making your friends understand that what you do and how you treat them doesn't necessarily reflect how you feel about them. Okay, so that was Wayne, his opinion on the film we've got coming up. Mike, do you have any of your usual words of wisdom before we get into the movie?
Well, as usually the case, I do have the synopsis of the film, and I'm happy to read that just to give the audience a bit of a listen. And this is going to be one of those weird films where if you've seen it, you're going to remember it. But if you haven't seen it and you're listening to this, you might find it hard to try and find it because it's not that widely available, I don't think. But Porky's did come out in April of 1982. It spawned 2 sequels, which was Porky's 2 the next day, and a film I remember from my childhood, which was Porky's 3, Porky's Revenge. And without further ado, I shall read the synopsis. It's a very short one, this one. 4 raucous high school students plot revenge on the redneck owner of a strip joint who upsets their hopes of losing their virginity. So not a lot in the synopsis. When you unpick that, 4 high school students who want to lose their virginity sounds a lot like a more modern movie, which I think this was the precursor to or the inspiration of American Pie.
I think you're probably right. Yeah. I obviously watched this when I was much younger too. I don't think I'd seen American Pie at that point. I think I watched this before when I was probably way too young to watch this movie. And, you know, similar to when we talked about Howard the Duck a few weeks ago, it's one of those movies that a lot of people saw when they were too young to see and probably helped to shape their understanding of human relationships, which is probably not a great thing, to be honest, because it's not the healthiest of movie in terms of any of that, you know, and I'm not just talking about, male-female relationships. I'm talking, or romantic relationships of any nature. I'm talking about the interaction between friends, because this movie, the relationships are quite toxic. They seem to be good friends, all of these people, but they constantly beat on each other, prank each other, and try and get each other into mischief. And I think the sort of opening gambit of this movie, where the guys decide that they're going to go and visit a prostitute, is precursored by some rather controversial language, you might say now. So the guys, bearing in mind, let's go back to this is set in 1954, Mike, and they go and they're talking. They arrive at high school and they're talking about part of this setup that they've managed to recruit somebody. What were your thoughts when you first watched this scene?
Oh, well, I first wrote down mild racism, which became full-on racism, to be honest with you. In terms of what they were talking about, it wasn't being outwardly racist, but the language they were using is incredibly outdated, even for the 1980s. But you've got to bear in mind the film's set in the 1950s, which, again, had different ideals and stuff like that. There was, and I think even covering... So in the late 70s and early 80s, I don't know if you know, connecting this together, there was a flurry of kind of sex comedies that came out that were all set in the 1950s and the 1960s. You had The Wanderers that came out around the same time. And largely it's the same kind of trope of guys trying to lose their virginity, always centered on these. They're either football players or they're basketball players or there's some kind of sports involved. The Italians did it with a film called Lemon Popsicle. That was their answer to it all as well. And what we got was Porky's. And this is...
Sorry, yeah, we also had in the UK, we had movies like The Confessions of movies. So I don't know if you ever saw Confessions of a Window Cleaner.
Confessions of a Window Cleaner.
Confessions of a Driving Instructor.
A taxi driver.
They're all...
Confessions of a Pop Star.
And they're all...
Yes, so our own answer to all of that. But Porky's, I think, was the most popular. And you're right. It opens with a teenager having a dream. And his mum starts calling, and as the camera pans down, he's got quite a big what's the word? Morning glory, I think, is the best way of putting it.
He's got up.
We don't know what he's dreaming
up,
about,
but he's not got up just yet.
And his mum walks in the room, and he flips over and kind of what can only assume is crushing it, and he's going, "Ow, ow," you know. And she basically says, "Get up for school. It's time for school." And that introduces our main character, Pee-wee, is his name. And Pee-wee by name and Pee-wee by nature, I think, is the theme of the film itself. But you're right. We are introduced to all these characters, which turn to be... There's about 7 of them. All largely look the same, kind of are the same.
Yeah, I struggled with that a little bit in terms of there was some clear definition. So Pee-wee, he's a lot smaller than the others. One of the characters is called Meat. He's a big guy in both stature and in girth, apparently, allegedly. So we're led to believe by the story.
He is cool.
You like Meat? Did
you? He plays it so cool. You can tell he's like in his mid to late 30s, playing a...
Yeah, they all look like they could easily be in their mid 30s. So when they get asked for ID in the bar, I mean, I know when I've been to the States, I was ID'd. I was in my mid 20s at that point, and it is a lot more stringent over there. But even so, these guys, some of them, you know, they had more of a receding hairline than I do, and that's saying something. So, you know, you kind of go, who are we trying to kid that these guys are like 17, 18? You know, these guys are definitely older than that.
Well, Meat is he's a full blown man. Is probably the best way of putting it.
Well, he's a big man. He's not even just a man, is he? He's like a unit, I think the term might be.
Well, he was also in the Wanderers as well, like the actor that played him. But this random girl goes over to him and she says, you know, the girls are obviously playing a trick on her, and she wants to know why he's called Meat, and he, you know, suggests taking away to show her, and his friends kind of step in, and it's a bit of a joke and stuff. But because she looks so young and he looks so old,
it's a lot creepy.
Like,
it seems creepier than it should, doesn't it? It's like, it's not quite behind the bike sheds kind of thing, is it?
But Pee-wee does something I've never done. Now, I'm putting this out there because I don't know if you've done it as well, Stephen. You know, we've always entered this podcast and we've always been reasonably honest about our previous life and shenanigans. Pee-wee takes a ruler and he measures his boner, and then under his bed he has a chart where he's charting it, and was upset that he's a few inches shorter than he was previously.
Inches, wow,
Steve.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know what the metric system was.
Yeah. So I mean, it would have been imperial measurements like that, but even so, if you're losing inches, that's worrying. That's really worrying. You know.
So, I mean, did you ever do any rule and measuring?
I think it is a rite of passage that you. I mean, I used a tape measure rather than a ruler, but it was. I'm kidding. I'm jesting, of course. It was it was those party ones you get in Christmas crackers.
I was going to say I didn't want to. I was going to say
that's
that.
Fine. And I think as growing up as a young man, it is something that you do because there's always going to be that sense of, am I normal? How do I match up? Do I meet expectations? Should it be tickling my knee? I don't know. This is just just the way it is. So Pee-wee does measure and then wonders what's going on, and you do wonder right through the film. You wonder whether does he really have any, should we say, shortcomings, or is this just a joke? But I think he genuinely is considered to have a little pecker.
He's the proto Jason Biggs character in American Pie. He's essentially almost the same character. Whereas obviously Jason Biggs, it's obviously based in the 90s, and thinking has changed, but he's essentially almost the same thing. And if you think about it, you've got Meat, who is like the jock of the bunch. You've got I don't know his name. You've got the tall guy who's like the brains behind the operation. There's definitely a trope at play here. And then we're introduced to all these other characters as well. So the bit that Steve was talking to earlier around that involves some racism, some racist language, talking about a prank they want to play on their friends, which involves going to this prostitute's house.
So they basically
or shack.
It is a shack in the woods, isn't it? And you kind of go, well, okay. So I think what the premise was here was that all 5 of them were going up to this thing, and they were going to pay between them for this prostitute. And what they would do is they would take turns. So I think they go through a process at one point of going first, sloppy seconds. Was it dirty thirds or filthy fourths? It was pretty awful. Yeah. Just the imagery that brought.
It was well thought through.
Yeah,
it was well thought through. By the way, all these guys are getting naked as well. They're all sitting there, vehemently naked, in this random shack in the middle of the woods in, what is the South, really, isn't it? It's the kind of South region of America. And two of the guys go in to partake, and then they end up mirroring the noises and stuff like that, and all the lads outside can hear, and they're all giggling and stuff, and they're doing the squeaky noises, and the woman who is I don't know if she was a prostitute or not.
It's difficult to know, but we were missing the part where she's introduced to them all, and she goes along the line of the naked guys and then checks them for VD. Let's see if they've got any sexually transmitted diseases, by basically just holding their balls and getting them to cough. And they're so naive, they believe this is a genuine thing that should happen. And like you said, and the sex noises start from the other room, and we're led to believe that the 2 guys who have organised this had been up there last week and done this, so they didn't need checking. And then you hear them in the back room, like you say, the noises coming out of that room appear to be that of a menage a trois. And then when we see inside, we see that actually that's all fake. And the lady in the lingerie, we won't call her a prostitute because we don't know whether she genuinely is or not, is faking sex noises, and then gets the other guys to join in. In the meantime, a rather large black gentleman comes in through the window, and they start to pour blood all over a machete and blood all over one of the guys, like fake blood. or pig's blood or something. And then the screaming starts, and then the shouting and the hollering, and then one of them bursts into the room with all the naked guys in, collapses to the floor, and then the very, very tall and very scary looking black gentleman with gold teeth storms in with the bloodied machete. And you've never seen five guys shit themselves so quickly and dive out of a window and run away quite as fast. Now, they run away really quickly, but Pee-wee seems to go off faster and further than anybody. And the other guys seem to realise that this isn't real, it's a prank, because everyone's laughing. But Pee-wee keeps going and runs off into the bayou, it looks like. And then we sort of flick back to a police car, I believe. At that point, Mike, do you?
Yeah, and let's not forget the I suppose the black guy that comes in to do the prank. He knows He knows one of the characters, but he is killing himself as well. Before it even happens and they're doing the blood, he is just cracking up with laughter, which again, laughter is infectious, as we know, and and you have a little chuckle, and yeah. I think it's one of the characters' brothers picks him up in a police car and decides to take them back to what sounds like a really posh place that they live at. So there's I think these are seen as the upper class of the area. Would that be about right?
Yeah,
Angel Beach. Sorry, yes, I had to look that up.
Yeah.
Angel Beach is the name of the place they live and stuff. And
I don't
and
think
Porky's is on the wrong side of town.
Well, you say the wrong side of town. It's 70 miles away, and they state that it's 70 miles away. And we'll get on to why that's a bit of a problem for me in terms of this story when we get a bit further on. But yeah, so one of their brothers is a policeman, one of their older brothers, and we see him in his car, and they're just driving along, going, "It's going to be a quiet night." I think one of them says, "I've got a feeling things are going to heat up." We don't know why. That's never explained why he thinks that's going to happen. But then all of a sudden they see a naked Pee-wee running down the road, and that alerts them to the fact that something's kicking off. So then the next thing we see is them turning up back at the shack with. Oh no, they go to the diner, don't they? They're all the other guys end up at the diner having a laugh and a joke about it and saying, "Oh, you really got us there, or you gits." And then the police car turns up with Pee-wee wearing an oversized police shirt because he's completely naked still under, and going, "You guys, you left me," and having a bit of an argument, which is it's a bizarre turn of affairs. But I guess it's just that whole pranking thing, isn't it? They're supposed to show how they're all friends, but they prank and wind each other up. And
yeah, and then we're introduced to Tommy. So the police officer is Tommy's brother, and Tommy throughout the film seems to have a bit of a death wish or some kind of screw loose.
He's a bit of a chip on his shoulder, hasn't he?
Yeah, but he keeps making the same decisions and doing the same things and getting exactly the same results, which we'll come on to, because he's the reason why these boys end up 70 miles away at this backwater redneck bar called Porky's.
Yeah. So they get the idea that they're gonna, they still want to lose they still want to get some. I think that's the key. These guys are obsessed with getting laid, aren't they? And it's key to them.
So let's talk about that obsession to getting laid for a moment, because let's focus in on the school. So we have the, I don't know if you noticed this, I've never seen more gym teachers at a school before in my entire life. There is literally more gym teachers in this school than there is students.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? You've got a coach
and the female,
two assistant coaches,
coach,
two assistant coaches, and Kim Cattrall, who appeared in last week's episode, obviously a mannequin, is in this episode too, and she plays like was it a gymnastics assistant?
Miss Honeywell. She plays Miss Honeywell.
Yeah.
And she's referenced as Lassie quite a few times, which we'll come on to.
Yeah.
But the big character I want to talk about is Miss Ballbreaker, or
Miss
Ballbreaker, as
yeah.
they call her, Miss Ballbreaker.
Yeah.
So she is she's the female coach.
Yes, a rather
Yes.
rather rotund lady, of larger stature, built a little bit like a barrel, isn't she? So she looks like she's solid. Like if you punched her in the stomach, your hand would hurt. But she reminds me of, she reminds me of Miss Trunchbull from Matilda. That very much that stern, scary woman thing going on there.
Kind of resting bitch face type look, you know.
Yeah, looks like she's wrestled a few times in her life. I think that's definitely the vibe you get
from the school's perspective. Then she's like she's the foil to the boys' shenanigans. She's the one keeping an eye out. Because what was interesting as well is there's quite a few male gym coaches or gym teachers, and they're all talking about the female students as well, and all the female, and they're just kind of perving on them and stuff like that as the camera kind of pans by.
It's really inappropriate, isn't it? It's like, oh dear, that leaves a bit of a dodgy taste in your mouth. And obviously, one of the coaches then refers to Miss Honeywell and her reputation and her nickname of Lassie, and starts convincing one of the other coaches that he would have a very good time with her if he got her into the storeroom upstairs.
Is it the men's locker room?
I thought it was the storeroom, the little towel room.
Locker room.
Well, and so that's the conversation they have anyway around that, and that seems to pique his interest, doesn't it? And then he does eventually sort of take her out on a few dates and have a sort of a romantic tryst with her, but he doesn't seem to get anywhere. He says that, I'm not getting anything, not even a kiss. So that progresses. But let's get back to our main characters. So they're all there too. And when the gym finishes, what would you normally do when you've finished your gym workout?
Well, naturally, you would go and get dressed and remain stinky all day. Or if you're not like that, you would go for a shower.
So if you're going for a shower, what would you do? Would you go for a shower yourself, or would you run round to a boiler room, lift up some pipes and stare into the girls' shower room and perv on the girls in the showers completely butt naked?
Well, this scene comes around a couple of times in the film, doesn't it? So the first time they do it, but they're just a bit too late and they don't really see anything. It's just the girls leaving.
Yeah.
And that's the first time we're introduced to and it's a very famous basement scene, actually, which we'll come on to because it happens a little bit later into the movie, which for me, it was the scene afterwards was the standout scene for me. That was the bit that actually made me laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're perving on the girls. The girls are none the wiser, and the girls are headed by this student called Wendy, and it's alluded to that Wendy and Pee Wee had a date, and he, they were making out, and when she reached down, he was already wearing a condom, and so she wants to get him back and retaliate, which is your giant condom that you're talking about. They somehow find a giant, I mean a
human size,
a man-sized, prophylactic, and throw it at him, and he seems quite taken with it, to be perfectly honest with
you. They try and put it over his head at one point.
They do, and funnily enough, the second film we've covered with a condom, we've had Howard the Duck's condom, and now we've got this big giant one as well. So there's and the second film with Kim Cattrall in it. So there's definitely something tying these together.
There's a pattern emerging.
There certainly is. So after all of that, they're having no luck, and the character, as I said, Tommy, convinces the boys to drive 70 miles into the Florida marshlands to go to this strip joint called Porky's. Now, I don't know about you, Steve, of whether you really thought about this. So Porky is a character. It's the name of the owner, and it's the place is named after him. To have a whole film named after you, he's not in it a lot, is he?
No, and I think it's the mythos, isn't it? It's that kind of, this is such a like a famous place to go to see girls in not and essentially it's kind of a lap dancing / sex club, really. And it's alluded to before they even go that the local police station is right next door to Porky's, and that's and saying, look, we hear that right away. We don't understand the relevance of it, but it's alluded to straight away. But Porky is he's the large gentleman who owns the establishment and sits up in his office out of the way doing his thing. And the guys go up there, don't they? And they turn up and they've got like $100, which, bearing in mind, in 1954 was not a small sum of money, But like you said, I don't think these guys are particularly poor because they all drove very nice cars for high school kids. They were all driving very nice sort of hot rods, real cool rider stuff.
The parallels to American Pie when they live in such a nice area in Chicago as well, right on the lake, and all this kind of stuff. It's immense. But the doorman asked them for ID, and they managed to waggle their way in and go straight to the bar, And if I was Porky, I'd be firing that doorman because Porky has a very different mindset to these kids being in his venue.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because it is a sleazy-ish place, right? The doorman you think would be working under his orders because he seems to be very much in control, but he's sort of like, whatever, just go in, the doorman is. But then when they go to the bar, that's fine. Everyone's fine with them being in there. The strippers are like, give me $1 and I'll show you my boobs. And so Pee-wee does it and stuff. And it isn't until they demand to speak to Porky. Now that might have been the problem all along, because the bartender says, "You pay me." I think if they'd have just paid the bartender, they may well have got what they wanted. But because he demands to speak to Porky and do business directly with him, I think Porky's so lazy that he's pissed off that he has to come all the way downstairs to speak to some snot-nosed punk about having some girls. And the $100, he's like, what, all 5 of you for $100? So they come to, he says, right, you can have 2 girls for an hour or 3 girls for half an hour. And they come to the arrangement, 3 girls for half an hour. And then Porky's like, right, go through that door over there, and then you can go to what they call the pig pen, which I'm assuming is the rooms where they could sleep with the girls. I mean, we never really know whether that actually exists or whether it's just a myth around this place.
Just a made-up thing. But did you not know it? So there's a couple of observations I've got to speak about when we're first introduced to Porky. So we see him from the kind of, I suppose, the mid-waist down. And I don't know if you noticed this, but when he comes out of his office and you hear the clunk, clunk, clunk downstairs, there's loads of pigs snorting in the background as he's walking down the stairs. And so, he was leading with that. But I've got to say, there's like a honky-tonk band playing as well, a proper redneck band. But why is someone dragging a midget? I don't get that bit.
Yeah, it's very odd, isn't it? I mean, there's... What you mean on the stage where they're... Well, no, it's like they were like the horses and he was like the rider, wasn't he? He was like the... He had the reins there. It was very strange why a person of small stature was required in there. I think they were just making it weird, kinky shit because this is the 50s and they wanted to make it weird and kinky, and to show the debauchery within this venue. They wanted to show, there's all this strange stuff going on and blah, blah, blah.
Not just strange stuff, Steve, but also... Okay, so if I was in that and I was observing what was around me, in that bar, they had a lot of weapons. They had full-size machine guns and a GPMG, okay, which is military-grade weapons.
Yeah.
I would be looking to get out there as quickly as possible. But these boys don't seem to have any common sense or any sense of danger or what's going to happen around them.
But then that's because they're boys, I guess. That's what you'd have to say, is they are none the wiser that this sort of thing doesn't exist in this kind of a place, so it could just be that it's set dressing, when you go to places. and you go to bars. We've all been to bars with bicycles on the walls. It just happens this one has submachine guns, So and Porky convinces them, right, okay, we'll do a deal then. You go through that door and wait, and then you'll hear a knock, and you go through to the upstairs through the back route. And what he actually does is pulls a lever and drops them through a trapdoor into the bayou, as it looks below.
Yeah, that's right. He gets rid of them. He kicks them out.
Yeah, basically, he takes their money and kicks them out. And they're not happy about that, as you wouldn't be, because, like I say, $100 in 1954 was a lot of money. So they kind of kick off and want their money back, and there's a bit of an argument ensues, and then the police arrive. And so the guys are like, oh, this is great. We'll get it sorted, because the police are here now, and the police, my brother's a police officer, different jurisdiction, but truth and justice will prevail. But the police officer is a bit of a dick, the local police officer, and he then proceeds to tell them that they're going to end up with a fine because of their broken headlight. And they're like, "What broken headlight?" And then he proceeds to smash one of their headlights and one of their tail lights, and threatens to fine them about $30 something, which I think is the last of the money they had. And it turns out, we find out afterwards, that the police officer is Porky's brother.
Porky's brother, yeah. They keep it in their family. Yep, and there you go, home with their tail between their legs, really, don't they?
Yeah, quite literally. I think all of the, not just Porky though, is it? It's like all of his staff and all of his customers are all laughing at these kids and going, "Ha ha ha, we've done you. Off you go, son. Don't come back."
They're not future focused. They're not thinking about their customers of tomorrow. Yeah. They're really not. But look, we go back to Porky's a few times, except for Tommy. Tommy can't seem to leave it, and regularly keeps going back to Porky's to get beaten up. Is what I took away from the subsequent scenes. He keeps turning up, beaten up, because he keeps going back there for some reason. And I don't know why.
But the key thing for me on that is when he gets back from being beaten up, right? He gets back to seeing all his friends, and he's in such a state that he's collapsing. But somehow he's had to drive 70 miles. And we're not talking highway driving. This is back road driving. There's no way he's doing 70 miles an hour on these roads. So he's driving for a good hour and a half here, right? In bits, and then collapses when he gets back on more than one occasion. And never thinks to take anybody with him, but still persists to do it.
The guy's got a death wish, because he gets beaten. And I think his brother, who is obviously a sheriff, is getting really, really worried for him as well, and keeps saying, "Look, stop doing this." But then he kind of falls out with his brother, and he's not happy with him, and the friends are falling out with him as well, and like, stop going back there. But he just can't seem to let it go. They lost $100. He never got laid. He wants his comeuppance.
Absolutely. And all this time we're getting little scenes of strange bigotry and sort of racist, religious hatred. The Jewish character gets into a fight with one of the other guys because he's Jewish, and he keeps getting called names, but he turns out to be a bit of a taekwondo expert, and so he kicks the shit out of the guy that threatens him. And there's a lot of strange stuff goes off. One of the characters' dads appears to be out of prison, and just likes to beat on him and treat him like crap. So it doesn't paint a great picture of this place, It doesn't feel like a lovely place to be. It doesn't feel like a childhood at all. This very much feels like the School of Hard Knocks all of a sudden, despite what seems like quite a well-to-do area. So it's a bit of a weird juxtaposition.
They cover a lot of different things in this film, to be perfectly honest with you. But you're right. That kind of what's the right word? Bigotry.
Yeah.
Is it does exist through the film. But again, I mean, the persecutor doing that becomes friends with the person he's doing it to, when he realizes that you're just a guy, you're just a kid making your way, and we're actually got a lot in common, and they become friends, and that's where they hatch this plan to seek their revenge on Porky's as a group of boys.
All in the meantime, in the meantime,
yeah,
they've gone back to staring at the girls in the locker room.
This is where this is the famous scene, isn't it? This is so. If I may, they managed to get in there this time, and there's about half a dozen girls all showering, and Pee Wee is not having the best look, and his view is obscured by a lady of a bigger stature, and he gets so frustrated that he ends up shouting through the peephole at her to move, and she looks quite scared. She doesn't know what's going on. She leaves. I'm presuming to go and get Miss Ballbreaker, but the rest of the girls stay and decide to have a bit of fun.
Tease the boys a little bit, don't they?
Tease the boy. That's right. And I think which character is it? Is it Billy? Billy's the one who it is. It's Billy. Billy's the one that decides to just take it. There's always one in a group of boys. I don't know if you found this. There's always one that just takes it a bit too far.
I think that was always me, wasn't it, Mike? I was the one that always took it a bit too far.
There's always one. Yeah, and you think, don't. This is not going to end well. Well, Billy decides to stick his knob through the peephole, just as Miss Ballbreaker walks in, and the girls skedaddle, and he's got his wanger in there, and he's like, "Hey, come on, ladies, come and grab a piece of this." Rather than Miss Ballbreaker just saying, "What are you doing? Please remove that," in her moment of madness, she decides to grab it and try it. What I'm presuming she's doing is trying to pull him through the wall from his
member via his. I think she's trying to stop him from getting away, but she's holding him by the penis. Now, that seems like a truly terrifying thing. That if your teacher uses both hands to hold your penis through a wall, then you've made some dodgy life choices, and this isn't a place you want to be in.
I have another theory about that, Steve. And again, this is getting quite lewd and crude, but this could have been the original inspiration behind the Glory Hole.
Well, I think they probably existed way before that. To be honest, I think they were just using that as a thing. But eventually, he manages to, in inverted commas, wriggle free and get away from that. She doesn't know categorically who it was. She can't prove who it was, but she did get a good look at his penis. So,
and it's the scene that follows, though.
It's incredible. It's probably the funniest scene in the whole movie.
It's the funniest scene because it's the guys. It's the gym. So there's two gym teachers. There is the dean, I think, is it, or the
principal. The
principal, and he's an elderly gentleman who looks like he's got a kind of nervous disposition.
I think he's English as well, which is never explained as to why this English guy is the principal of this American high school in Angel Beach, and he's just listening to Miss Ballbreaker talking about how she wants to line up a group of young lads and get them to show her their penises because she recognized a mole on one of them, and she believes she knows who it was. And
she believes it's Billy's.
Yeah, she
calls
Billy
him out. Yeah.
And she said
it's Billy's. I'd recognise that penis anywhere.
Exactly. And all the time when she's explaining this, the coaches are trying to stifle their laughs, but doing it, and it's so convincing, it's so real, because they're trying their best not to laugh. But you know what it's like when you're not supposed to laugh and you're one of those situations and you're with somebody like, we've been there, Mike, me and you, and you can't look at each other because that's just making it worse. And she says things like, put him in a room with four other guys. You pick, I don't care who they are, random four other guys. And, that you can cover their heads with sacks if you want to save their embarrassment, but I just need to see their penises. And the whole time, these coaches are just dying. And eventually she says, I don't think you're taking this seriously, principal. And he bursts out laughing as well. And it's genuinely like the silliest scene. But, if you do get the chance to watch this movie, it is very, very funny and well worth it.
It's the scene that saves the film because even I was laughing, to be honest with you, because she plays it so deadpan.
Yeah,
and she's so serious, and she's like, "I'm gonna find this Billy. I know him. That's his penis. I recognize the mole it. I need to see it again so I can confirm this. You got to help me out with this one. And she comes up with 3 different ideas, and the one you just spoke about is probably the biggest one. But it's seeing the guys in the background, and then the principal trying to hold it together, and then he just bursts out laughing. And she says, I get the feeling you're not taking this seriously. And they just break apart when she says that, and they're just absolutely killing themselves laughing. Brilliant. So probably the one scene that saved the film for me, that was the standout for me on that one.
Yeah, so they hatched the plan that they're going to go back to Porky's, and they're gonna exact their revenge now, because after the dance, they all go to.
Wait, did we forget the Lassie scene?
We did. I suppose we should really talk about that. So
we should really cover Kim Cattrall's Lassie scene as Miss Honeywell. Yeah, because that the boys are all playing basketball. I think it follows directly after the glory hole scene, doesn't it? Well, the gym teacher that's dating her finally coaxes her into the storeroom, locker room, and she goes mental over a dirty used jock strap, like mental. And she's like, it's like something. It's like an aphrodisiac to her. It's like something happens to her when she's in this room. The dirty smell of sweat and boy smells. Yeah, just drives her nuts. And he does not waste any time exploiting that situation.
And so they become intimate very quickly, and she is very vocal. And then we understand how she earns the nickname Lassie, because she howls like a dog as they are mid-coitus.
It kind of starts like a yap, doesn't it? Yeah. It starts at a yap and then turns into a howl. And then the boys are all in this basketball game, and they can't concentrate because they're all laughing, and they can't pass the ball around and stuff like that. And all you can hear is, yep, yep, yep. You know, and she's like, I tip my hat to Kim Cattrall. It must have been one of her very first movies that she'd ever done. He even stuffs
the dirty jockstrap.
A dirty jockstrap in her mouth, which I think makes it a little.
But he holds it there with his own face. Can you imagine? He holds it in her mouth with his own face, which to me was like, there's a limit, man. There's a limit, you know?
That's a big no-no right there. That's a big no-no. And that's if we're talking about the film as a whole, that's probably about it for the dirty, smutty side of it. Because before we get into the kind of finale when they exact their revenge on Porky's, I remember it being much dirtier than it actually is. It's not that. It's not that.
No.
Rude.
No. And I think this is a retrospective look back with our eyes now as adults. You know, when we were kids, there was very little sex and violence on TV. You know, you didn't see the stuff you see now. There wasn't a Game of Thrones with people doing rude things all the time, and you know, boobs out everywhere and penises flopping around. For good measure. It was very much like the odd glimpse on something like this film, and so it creates a bit of a mythology around it that it's ruder than it actually is. And it was probably, a lot of it was to allow it to get its rating. They would have cut certain elements out to be R rather than X-rated and things like that. So yeah, it definitely wasn't as dirty as I expected it to be. And I don't know, you know, I mean, we'd have to watch the sequels again to understand whether or not that was genuinely.
Well, before the end of the show, remind me, and I'll read the synopsis for the 2 sequels, as well, towards the end, because I think it's worth covering those two films.
Well, we're getting towards that point now, anyway. So let's crack on. So they hatch a plan to take revenge on Porky, and it's a weird one because they don't really struggle with the plot. It just happens all very quickly. And I don't know about you, but you know, even if I was running a raucous bar, if somebody starts chainsawing the legs off my building, I guess I kind of hear it, or
you're gonna hear it.
Somebody outside, some of the security guys are going to notice that the legs are being sawn down, and then they get explosives as well, don't they? So it's kind of a weird situation.
I don't know where they get all that. Yeah, I don't know where they get the explosives from. Yeah. Because look, these are teenage boys, right? They are sawing the legs. It's over a buyer. They're sawing the stilt legs off this building. They're also putting explosives on there. they're gonna kill people.
Yeah,
There's gonna be death here.
And you know what the most worrying thing is? That the older brother, the cop, has come with them and partaken in this. He's happy to join in.
He is, because they're beating his brother up a bunch of times. Yeah. So he wants to. He wants to. Despite the fact Tommy keeps going back there to get beaten up.
Yeah, but also the coach, the one who's been with Lassie, he is there too, because he said, "Oh yeah, I'm only 23, and I got ripped off by Porky some years ago."
Right.
So he goes with them too. It's like, where's all this coming from? I don't understand. So obviously they have an increase in numbers. They go and they set this trap, and they say, we're gonna do this, and they basically destroy Porky's bar. And then a chase ensues, and they chase them all the way back to Angel Beach. But this is the point where Porky, so angry, doesn't realize he's out of his jurisdiction. He can't, his brother, having the police, they were quite clever in this. They get out of the point where they have any jurisdiction whatsoever. And that's when the older brother, the cop, starts to, return the favor with regards to the vehicle and the fines and smashing up the car. And they basically send Porky running away with his tail between his legs.
Quite literally.
But I can't help but think this is really short-sighted, that somebody of that power would be thinking of a way to get his revenge, and maybe that's what the third movie leads us to. But it does feel very short-sighted in really pissing off somebody like that. Sometimes it's best to just learn your lesson and stay away, but they don't, and they still do that.
If we take a step back, Porky, what they've just done is destroy Porky's business and his livelihood. Is what they've done. These spoiled boys from the posh end of town have gone over there. Now Porky's minding his own business. He didn't ask them to come over. He doesn't ask Tommy to keep coming over. All right, he keeps beating him up, but we don't know what Tommy's doing. And so to get their revenge, because they couldn't get laid, they destroy his business.
I mean, he does rip them off.
Now, yes, it's a screwball film. It's a comedy film, and I'm looking into it way too deep, as I do on all of these podcasts. But when you really frame it like that, it just kind of there's almost arson in there. There's explosives. It's just.
But let's not forget
that
the joy is that Pee-wee does eventually get laid with with the girl he had dated for a little bit before, despite the condom being too small for him, too big for
Wendy.
him. Yeah, with Wendy, and
with Wendy Williams,
he manages to break his duck and gets laid. So all is well with the world, and even the young lad whose dad is abusive eventually stands up to him and sends him on his merry way and tells him
that's right. We never covered that at all, did we? So his dad is this mean biker who looks in his 40s, and he's just out of prison, and typical cliche.
Yeah, we talked.
Oh,
about
right,
that.
Okay. Okay.
So that's So he gets his comeuppance there. So there's kind of a sort of a coming of age element in there about that whole kind of standing up for yourself and becoming a man, across the whole breadth of it. But it was silly and it was fun and it was a coming of age comedy. And you know what? Despite its crudeness and outdated references, I did enjoy it more than I thought I would. I thought it would be too tasteless, but actually, I think I enjoyed the banter between the guys a little bit more.
Yeah.
Than
well, let me read the synopsis of Porky's 2 and Porky's 3 then before you give your score, because Porky's 1 came out in 1982, as we know. They fast tracked Porky's 2 into 1983. A year later, and then Porky's Revenge, the third in the trilogy, came out 2 years after that. So from the first film to the third film, there's kind of 2 to 3 years at play.
Yeah, well, I think it was made in 81 because that's what it says on the thing. But I think it was probably released.
And by Porky's Revenge, the guy that plays Meat, he looks about 52. By the time he ages really quickly, and he probably is about then as well. So Here is the overview for Porky's 2 The Next Day. Pee-wee and his trouble-seeking teen friends are up to more antics in this raucous sequel. When an overzealous reverend and his followers target an upcoming Shakespeare festival for being indecent, Pee-wee and the boys prove to be surprisingly supportive of the arts as they turn the tables on the pious group. Also contending with the Ku Klux Klan and a shifty politician, the mischievous crew even finds time to take on stern gym teacher Miss Ballbreaker. No word of Porky's in there. So although it's called Porky's 2, I don't think Porky appears in that particular film. And then the overview for Porky's Revenge, which is the one I remember as a kid. So I never actually saw 1 and 2. The one I used to watch was this third one as a kid, which I should never have been watching. So it started off, the ratings in Porky's was about 6.1. It had quite relatively positive ratings. The second one was a straight 5. This one's a 4.8 and it's gone down the way. So the wild sequel finds Edward Pee-wee Morris, Anthony Meat Tuparello, and their Angel Beach High buddies up to more adolescent mischief. The boys' nemesis, Porky, has returned to town and now operates a riverboat casino. While the teens figure out a way to expose Porky's latest corrupt venture, they must deal with lust, unexpected romance, academic woes, and athletic challenges, all leading up to a chaotic finale. Now, I do remember this, right, because Porky's actually opens on a dream sequence with Pee-wee where he's graduating from high school and someone steps on his graduation robe and he steps out of it and it rips off him, but he's completely and utterly naked. Right. And then everybody in the school see him completely naked. It ends with the same scene, but for real, and they all get naked during their graduation ceremony.
Okay.
The same thing happens. Someone steps on it and it rips off and he's completely and utterly naked apart from his socks. And then I think other guys just start taking their clothes off and that's where it ends.
Maybe it's the solidarity that they're showing there that we're not going to let our friend. But, you know, that's...
So the question is, based on the overview of Porky's 2, is that a film you want to watch? It's got Ku Klux Klan, dodgy politicians, and a pious reverend trying to break down Shakespeare.
Do you know, it sounds a bit more like a Cannonball Run type movie by that point, doesn't it? It sounds much more like you're going to see, Burt Reynolds come flying in with a Stetson on and something. I think I'd like to see them again purely out of a kind of strange curiosity. And I didn't think I'd seen the third one, but the whole Riverboat Casino thing seems really familiar to me now. So maybe I have seen it, and I just tried to put it out of my mind. But more importantly, Mike, I think it's time that we get down to ratings and understanding what your thoughts were on what is Wayne's favorite movie. So how many nipple tassels do you give this out of 5?
I'm going to give this... I'm going to give this 2.5 nipple tassels, and the 0.5 comes from the redeeming scene with Miss Ballbreaker wanting to do a penis lineup.
Fantastic. I think I agree with you. I think it's right down the middle here. It was probably my first experience of full frontal nudity in any movie that I saw, which was, obviously jarring and confusing and what have you. And I probably would have rated it lower before I watched it again. But I think actually some of the stuff in there was quite humorous. I did like the prank stuff. And, it did have some heart. They were good friends. And, you did start to actually quite like these characters, even the ones that were a bit of a dick. So overall, if you can get hold of it might be worth a watch and just to experience it, because it has a whole kind of mythology around it and this type of movie, this kind of sexual exploitation movies that were so prevalent at the time. So worth checking out, I think. Right. Well, Mike, I think that's all we've got time for tonight. So thank you for joining me again. To everybody out there, let us know what you thought of the movie. We're still available on our social media channels, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Drop us a line and let us know what your thoughts are. And we'll be back for another episode very soon and another character's favourite movie. Until then, Mike?
Yap like lassie.
Bad Scripts was written and performed by Mike Garlier and Steve Jones. a Beach Tide production.